She held her newborn son for exactly 47 minutes. Then she stood up, walked out of the hospital room, and vanished into the night. No goodbye, no explanation, just a text message that would shatter a man's world forever. This is what happened next. March 15, 2023. St. Mary's Hospital, Portland, Oregon. Room 314. The fluorescent lights hummed softly as Marcus Thompson cradled his son for the first time. The baby's fingers wrapped around his thumb, and in that moment he thought he understood what people meant when they talked about unconditional love. His wife, Rebecca, lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling. He assumed she was exhausted. Labor had been 18 hours. Complicated. Painful. He kissed her forehead and whispered thank you. She didn't respond. At 11:42 that night, a nurse came to check on Rebecca. The bed was empty. Her clothes were gone. Her phone was gone. Rebecca was gone. Marcus searched the hallways, the cafeteria, the parking lot. Nothing. At 12:03 a.m., his phone buzzed. One message, 17 words that would haunt him for months. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Please take care of him. Don't look for me. She had left her newborn son. She had left her husband. She had left her life. And nobody knew why. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened in that hospital room, we need to go back 7 months. To a Tuesday afternoon in August 2022, Marcus and Rebecca had been married for 3 years. They weren't the couple that posted constantly on social media or threw elaborate parties. They were quiet, steady. Marcus worked as a project manager at a construction firm. Rebecca was a dental hygienist. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Northeast Portland, the kind of place where you could hear your neighbors' conversations through the walls, but nobody really minded. Their marriage wasn't perfect. Whose is? Marcus worked long hours. Rebecca sometimes felt invisible, like her life had become a routine she never remembered signing up for. But they loved each other. Or at least, Marcus thought they did. When Rebecca told him she was pregnant, he cried. Not from sadness or fear, but from overwhelming joy. He had always wanted to be a father. His own dad had died when Marcus was 12, and he had spent his entire adult life trying to fill that void, trying to become the kind of man his father would have been proud of. He started reading parenting books immediately. He downloaded apps to track the baby's development week by week. He would place his hand on Rebecca's stomach every night and talk to their son, telling him about the world he was about to enter, the life they were going to build together. Rebecca smiled during these moments, but her smiles never quite reached her eyes. What Marcus didn't know was that 3 months into the pregnancy, on a rainy Thursday afternoon in November, Rebecca's entire world had shifted. She was shopping at the Safeway on Burnside Street, pushing her cart down the cereal aisle when she heard a voice she hadn't heard in nearly 5 years. Becca? She turned. And there he was, Daniel Cruz, her ex-boyfriend, the man she had loved before Marcus, the man who had broken her heart. He looked different, older. His hair was shorter, his jawline sharper, but his eyes were the same. Dark, intense, the kind of eyes that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. They talked for 20 minutes in that grocery store. Small talk at first. How have you been? What are you up to these days? Then deeper, he told her he had moved back to Portland after working in Seattle for 3 years. He told her he had thought about her often. He told her he regretted the way things ended between them. Rebecca felt something stir inside her that she hadn't felt in years. Not love exactly, but possibility. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, her life didn't have to be so predictable. When they parted ways, Daniel asked for her number, and against every rational thought in her mind, she gave it to him. The first text came 2 days later. Simple. Harmless. Hey, it was really good seeing you the other day. Hope you're doing well. Rebecca stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. She told herself it was just 2 old friends reconnecting, nothing more. But over the next few weeks, the texts became more frequent, more personal. They talked about their memories together, the places they used to go, the dreams they used to share. Daniel was charming. He always had been. He knew exactly what to say to make her feel seen, to make her feel like she mattered. By mid-December, they were meeting in person. Coffee shops at first, then lunch. Then long drives through the Columbia River Gorge, where they would park overlooking the water and talk for hours. Rebecca knew it was wrong. She was married, she was pregnant. But every time she thought about ending it, Daniel would say something that pulled her back in. He told her he had made a mistake letting her go. He told her he had spent years regretting it. He told her that if she gave him another chance, he would spend the rest of his life making her happy. And Rebecca believed him, because she wanted to. because the life she was living felt too small, too ordinary, and Daniel represented something bigger, something exciting, something that felt like freedom. At home, Marcus noticed nothing. Or maybe he noticed but didn't want to believe it. Rebecca was quieter than usual, distant. When he asked if everything was okay, she blamed it on pregnancy hormones. He believed her. He trusted her. And that trust made everything worse. On New Year's Eve, while Marcus was working a late shift, Rebecca met Daniel at a hotel downtown. She told herself it would be the last time. Just one night to say goodbye properly. But one night became 2, then 3, and before she knew it, she wasn't sneaking around anymore. She was planning. She was imagining a future that didn't include Marcus. A future where she could start over with Daniel, where she could be the person she used to be before responsibility and routine buried her alive. By the time the baby was born, Rebecca had already decided she was going to leave. She just needed the right moment. And that moment came in the quiet darkness of a hospital room, when Marcus fell asleep in the chair beside her bed, exhausted and trusting and completely unaware that his wife was already gone. Marcus didn't sleep much that first night. His son, who he had already decided to name Ethan after his late father, woke every 2 hours. Each time, Marcus would lift him carefully, change his diaper, warm a bottle the nurses had provided, and feed him while staring out the window at the city lights below. He kept glancing at the empty bed where Rebecca should have been. He kept checking his phone, hoping for another message, something more than those 17 cold words. Nothing came. By morning, panic had fully set in. He called Rebecca's phone 43 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. He called her mother, her sister, her closest friends. Nobody had heard from her. He filed a missing person report with the Portland Police Department, but the officer who took his statement was skeptical. She left a note, "Sir, technically, she's not missing. She left voluntarily." Marcus wanted to scream. His wife had just given birth and disappeared. How was that not an emergency? But the system didn't work that way. She was an adult. She had made a choice. And unless there was evidence of foul play, there was nothing they could do. For the next 3 days, Marcus barely functioned. He moved through the hospital hallways like a ghost, signing discharge papers, listening to nurses explain how to care for a newborn, nodding without really hearing. Friends came to visit. They brought flowers and stuffed animals, and awkward condolences. What do you even say to someone whose wife abandoned them hours after giving birth? Marcus's best friend Kyle stayed with him the first week. He helped set up the nursery, showed Marcus how to swaddle Ethan properly, made sure there was food in the fridge. But even Kyle didn't know what to say. The betrayal was too big, too incomprehensible. How does someone carry a child for 9 months and then just walk away? What kind of person does that? Marcus didn't have answers. All he had was a baby who needed him, and a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. The first month was the hardest. Marcus took family leave from work, but money was tight. Rebecca had been contributing to their income, and now that was gone. He applied for assistance programs, borrowed money from his brother, sold his truck, and bought a cheaper used car. Every decision was about survival. There was no room for grief, no time to process what had happened. Ethan needed him every moment of every day. Diapers, bottles, sleepless nights, doctor appointments. Marcus learned quickly. He learned how to function on 3 hours of sleep. He learned which cry meant hunger and which meant discomfort. He learned how to hold Ethan against his chest, feeling the tiny heartbeat against his own, and find moments of peace in the chaos. But there were hard nights when Ethan wouldn't stop crying, and Marcus felt so overwhelmed, so completely out of his depth, that he would sit on the bathroom floor and cry too. He missed Rebecca, not the woman who had left, but the woman he thought he had married, the woman he had built a life with. He kept wondering what he had done wrong. Had he not been attentive enough? Had he taken her for granted? Was this all his fault? His mother came to visit often. She would hold Ethan and tell Marcus he was doing an incredible job, but even her encouragement couldn't fill the emptiness. People in his life started choosing sides. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the messiness of his situation. Others rallied around him, bringing meals, offering to babysit, showing up in ways that reminded him he wasn't completely alone. Marcus learned who his real friends were during those months. And he learned something else too. He learned that he was stronger than he thought, that he could endure more than he imagined, that love for his son was enough to keep him moving forward, even when everything inside him wanted to collapse. By the time Ethan was 3 months old, Marcus had found a rhythm. It wasn't easy, but it was manageable. He went back to work part-time. His mother watched Ethan during the day. In the evenings, it was just the two of them, father and son, building a life from the wreckage of what had been. While Marcus was learning to be a single father, Rebecca was posting photos on Instagram, smiling at the camera, holding hands with Daniel. Captions about new beginnings and finding yourself and choosing happiness. She had moved into Daniel's apartment in the Pearl District, a sleek one-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Willamette River. It was everything her life with Marcus wasn't. Exciting, spontaneous, free. For the first few weeks, Rebecca convinced herself she had made the right choice. She and Daniel went to restaurants Marcus could never afford. They took weekend trips to the coast. They stayed up late drinking wine and talking about the future they were going to build together. Daniel was attentive, romantic. He told her she was beautiful. He told her she deserved to be happy. He told her everything she had been desperate to hear. But slowly, things started to change. Daniel didn't like it when Rebecca mentioned Ethan. He would tense up, change the subject, act like her son didn't exist. When she tried to talk about how guilty she felt, he told her she needed to let go of the past. You made your choice, Becca. You can't keep looking back. So she stopped talking about it. She pushed the guilt down, buried it beneath brunches and shopping trips and the illusion of a perfect life. But the guilt didn't disappear. It festered. Late at night, when Daniel was asleep beside her, Rebecca would lie awake and wonder what Ethan looked like, whether he was healthy, whether Marcus hated her. She thought about reaching out 100 times, but every time she picked up her phone, Daniel would wake up and pull her close and remind her that she had chosen him, that they were building something beautiful, that she couldn't ruin it by dwelling on the past. And so she stayed silent. She stayed trapped in a choice she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. By the time Ethan was 4 months old, the cracks in Rebecca and Daniel's relationship were impossible to ignore. He was controlling, jealous. He didn't like her talking to male coworkers or going out with friends without him. He criticized her appearance, her choices, her opinions. The charming man from the grocery store had slowly revealed himself to be something else entirely, something darker. But Rebecca had burned every bridge to be with him. She had abandoned her husband. She had abandoned her child. Where could she possibly go now? 6 months after Rebecca left, Marcus received a phone call from an unknown number. It was late, almost midnight. Ethan was asleep in his crib. Marcus was folding laundry and half watching a basketball game when his phone buzzed. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Silence. Then crying. Soft, desperate crying. Marcus, it's me. Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. He froze. The laundry slipped from his hands onto the floor. I know I don't have the right to call. I know I hurt you. Heavy, suffocating. Marcus thought about Ethan, asleep in the next room. The son Rebecca had walked away from without a second thought. He thought about the sleepless nights, the fear, the exhaustion, the way he had to rebuild his entire life because she chose someone else. You didn't make a mistake, Marcus said, his voice steady. You made a choice. You chose to leave me. You chose to leave Ethan, and I chose to survive without you. Marcus, please. I've spent 6 months becoming the father Ethan deserves. I've learned how to feed him, comfort him, protect him. I've learned how to live with your absence. And now you want to come back because the life you chose didn't work out the way you thought it would. Rebecca was sobbing now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say. I don't need your apology, Marcus said. What I needed was a partner. What Ethan needed was a mother. And you weren't there. So we figured it out without you. Can I at least see him? Please. Just once. Marcus closed his eyes. Part of him wanted to say yes. Part of him wanted to believe people could change, that Rebecca deserved a second chance. But the other part of him, the part that had held Ethan through every fever and every nightmare, knew the truth. I can't let you back into his life just because you're hurting, Marcus said. He's stable now. He's happy. And I won't risk his peace for your redemption. Rebecca's sobs grew louder. I understand, she whispered. I'm sorry. For everything. And then she hung up. Marcus sat in the silence of his living room for a long time. The phone still in his hand, the weight of the conversation settling into his chest. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel satisfied. He just felt sad. Sad for what could have been. Sad for the family that was supposed to exist. 3 months later, Marcus received a letter. No return address. She had moved out of Daniel's apartment. She was staying with a cousin in Eugene. She was in therapy. She was trying to get her life together. She didn't ask to see Ethan. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just wanted Marcus to know that she was grateful. Grateful that he had been strong enough to protect their son when she wasn't. Grateful that Ethan had a father who loved him unconditionally. And she wanted Marcus to know that one day, when Ethan was older, if he ever wanted to know about her, she would be there to answer his questions. But until then, she wouldn't intrude. She would respect the boundary Marcus had set. Marcus folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Maybe one day he would show it to Ethan. Maybe one day his son would want to understand the full story. But for now, all that mattered was the life they were building. Ethan was 9 months old. He was crawling, starting to babble. He had Marcus's eyes and Rebecca's smile. He was curious and joyful and completely unaware of the pain that had surrounded his birth. Marcus had started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a woman named Lisa who worked in his building. She knew his story. She knew he came with baggage. And she stayed anyway, because she saw what Rebecca couldn't. She saw a man who had turned tragedy into strength, who had chosen love over bitterness, who had refused to let abandonment define him. On Ethan's first birthday, Marcus threw a small party. His mother, his brother, Kyle, Lisa, a few close friends. They sang happy birthday. Ethan smashed a cake with both hands, frosting covering his face. Everyone laughed. Marcus took a photo and posted it online with a simple caption. 1 year ago, my world changed forever. Today, I'm grateful for every moment. Within an hour, the post had hundreds of likes. Comments poured in. Friends he hadn't spoken to in years reached out to congratulate him. Strangers shared their own stories of resilience and single parenthood. And somewhere, in a small apartment in Eugene, Rebecca saw the photo. She stared at her son's smiling face, at Marcus holding him, at the life she had given up. She cried. But this time, the tears were different. Not tears of regret, tears of acceptance. She had made her choice, and Marcus had made his, and maybe, just maybe, that was okay. This is a true story. The names have been changed to protect the people involved. But the pain, the betrayal, the resilience, all of it happened exactly as described. Marcus still lives in Portland. Ethan is now 2 years old, thriving, happy, loved beyond measure. Rebecca is still in Eugene, still in therapy, still working to understand the choices she made and why she made them. She hasn't seen Ethan since the day he was born, and Marcus hasn't decided if he ever will let her. Because forgiveness is complicated. It's not a switch you flip. It's a process. And some wounds take longer to heal than others. What Marcus learned through all of this is something profound. He learned that revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be destructive. So here's the question for you. If you were Marcus, could you have forgiven Rebecca? Could you have let her back into your son's life? Or would you have done exactly what he did and protected the peace you fought so hard to build? And if you were Rebecca, what would you do now? How do you live with a choice that cost you everything? These aren't easy questions, but they're worth asking. Because stories like this remind us that life is fragile, that the choices we make ripple out in ways we can't always predict, and that sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who have to learn to love us from a distance. If this story moved you, if it made you think or feel or question anything about love and loyalty and second chances, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us your thoughts. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, because every week we bring you real stories about real people navigating the messiest, most beautiful, most heartbreaking parts of being human. Stories that don't have perfect endings, but have honest ones. Thank you for watching. And remember, the strongest thing you can do isn't hold on. Sometimes it's knowing when to let go. So here's the question for you. If you were Marcus, could you have forgiven Rebecca? Could you have let her back into your son's life? Or would you have done exactly what he did and protected the peace you fought so hard to build? And if you were Rebecca, what would you do now? How do you live with a choice that cost you everything? These aren't easy questions, but they're worth asking, because stories like this remind us that life is fragile, that the choices we make ripple out in ways we can't always predict. And that sometimes, the people who love us most are the ones who have to learn to love us from a distance. If this story moved you, if it made you think or feel or question anything about love and loyalty and second chances, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us your thoughts. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, Because every week, we bring you real stories about real people navigating the messiest, most beautiful, most heartbreaking parts of being human. Stories that don't have perfect endings, but have honest ones. Thank you for watching. And remember, the strongest thing you can do isn't hold on. Sometimes, it's knowing when to let go.